Larry Jennings is one of our pastors here at the Fellowship of the Inner Light, and he recently so-called retired from being a funeral director and the manager of Altmeyer Funeral Homes. He continually answers the call to go back in and serve and help in that way, as well as serves our church in that way, and many other ways. He's been on our board of directors many times. He currently serves as an alternate on our board and is on our pastoral council. Likewise, when you look around the grounds, he's the one who takes good care of our yard and our grounds. So he is a person of multi-talents and service that he gives to us. Today, he's going to speak with us a bit about a walk he took in England. He and Keith Worrell just went there recently, and Keith will speak next week. And the place they went to is called the Cotswolds. It's in central southwest England. And I decided to look up the etymology of the word, and it's derived from another word spelled differently that looks like Cotswold, and it was from the 12th century, and there were other variations on the word. And it means, originally it was C-O-D, not C-O-T, Cotswold. It's an open high land. But all I know from reading about it is it's called an area of outstanding natural beauty, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about it from his own experience. And so also, this word cod is a hypothetical mother goddess in Celtic mythology that they believe may have been worshipped at some point in that region. So that's what we know from the internet, but we're going to find out a lot more of the heart and soul of it from our speaker today, Larry Jennings. Let's give him a warm welcome.
And thank you for that wonderful coffee to get me perked up for today's talk. You saw me sneaking in during the first song with it. It was appreciated. And thanks to my wife for being here today, for putting up with my adventures. I really appreciate it. But recently, I did have the pleasure of taking a walking tour through the Cotswolds of England. And while I was on this tour, I was checking my email, and lo and behold, I got an email for Bruce inviting me to speak today. And I immediately thought to myself, this will be easy. I've got 2 talks prepared, ready to go. One's on a funeral. I'll do that one later. And I had another one on experiencing Mother Nature, but I said no. I decided I'd rather share with you some of my adventures. And I wrote some of this while I was there. The Cotswolds are in the southeastern England and have, in my opinion, after being there, some of the most beautiful countryside and views anywhere in the world. You would agree with me, wouldn't you? She shared with me that she spent a lot of time there growing up. I was able to be a part of this world for just a few days, but my experience there will live with me forever. The world that I experienced was magical. And as Susan talked about the meaning of the words, here's another meaning that I picked up while I was there. The word wolds means gentle hills, and cot means sheep enclosures. So we have a world of gentle hills and pastures of sheep. I arrived there on a Saturday morning just 3 weeks ago. And we came to a beautiful village that was built in the 12th century, Chipping Campden. This village has remained pretty much on the outside exactly as it was built. On the inside, of course, much of it's been modernized with the normal conveniences. But stepping into these buildings is stepping back in time. This village is at the southernmost point of the Cotswolds Way, 102 miles of protected walking trails, protected by law. The word chipping means marketplace. The Cotswolds were known worldwide for their high quality of wool, making a lot of people in this area very wealthy. Growing up in New York, I remember the local history of the Hudson Bay Trading Company that came from England that traded with our local Native Americans where I grew up. I saw a picture of this wool in a local museum being traded to a Native American from the Mohegan tribe, right in the center of upstate New York where I came from. This town was a major center for buyers and traders for this wool and would be shipped all over the world. I was able to stay at the Knowles Arms Hotel in a room with its original fireplace. It was spectacular. The furniture was old and ancient and just had that real feel of where you were. It's now a bed and breakfast, was built in the 17th century, and is right in the center of town, and I could look out my window and see the marketplace. And King Charles II stayed there during their Civil War. I walked down the street that day with Keith Worrell, and we walked into the Red Lion Pub, where we were greeted by a young man opening the pub for the day. We sat at a table and watched the king's coronation as we enjoyed a wonderful local ale. We arrived the day of his coronation. Immediately, I was struck by the friendliness of the people there. There were no strangers, only people you hadn't met yet. We were welcomed and made to feel right at home. I later explored the town of about 2,000 residents, and of course, I found the local cemetery and the grounds of St. Paul's Church. I discovered that the wool was so prevalent that they used to wrap their deceased loved ones for burial rather than use a traditional wooden casket. Only a funeral director would look for that information. The town's beginnings came from plans to build this community here in the 12th century. Everything revolved around the church, so it was built around that. It was the center of community life and still is. People still attend here, was evident as I walked through. I was amazed that the door was open and a sign simply said, "You're welcome to come in." I knew it was still an active church because as I entered, there was a table right inside the door where some of the local children had made crowns the previous week in honor of the king and coronation. As I left, I couldn't help but notice the peacefulness of this place. There is an energy that places like this have where you feel connected to its spirit. I don't feel that everywhere, but I did feel that loving energy present there and was drawn back there several times that week. Sometimes I would just go in and sit in a pew and just meditate. Sometimes I would just put a hand on the wall of the church on the outside and just feel that living spirit that it still has. Our church has that same feeling. We may not have been built in the 12th century, but that loving energy here is heartfelt and spreads out in waves to our neighbors and community. The people of Chipping Camden have an amazing sense of community, I soon learned. Then very next day, we woke up, Keith and I had breakfast, and we prepared to meet our group for the day's walk. When we walked outside, there were scores of people wearing volunteer vests, setting up the town square for a community coronation party. I watched as local children performed by dancing, and then I listened to a singer singing ballads about this beautiful countryside. Every community across England was having street parties to celebrate the coronation, and it was all done by volunteers and the help of a committee put together by King Charles. I watched as families came into the marketplace carrying picnic baskets to share with one another. Later, after our walk, we were able to join in, and we were welcomed by everyone, making us feel at home. I sat next to an older gentleman, and he asked me what I thought of the coronation. I told him I enjoyed enjoyed watching it in the Red Lion with a cold ale. I said, I loved the pageantry and I loved the tradition of it. He nodded and told me he thought it was a lot of foolishness. But the party was great. He went on to explain to me that everyone in this village gives back to the community. For example, the volunteers, he said, seen here have come together to simply do what they do. Everyone plays a role and gives back to this place in some way. He proudly told me that he gave talk on town's history and accept donations for the community fund as his way of giving. These people do understand universal law and that all we give, we will receive. This man's name was George, and I later learned, as he was one of our speakers at a local history. And later that night, I sat next to him at dinner, and he struck up a conversation. He told me that when he grew up during the daily bombings of London during World War II, that many children were placed on trains going to the Cotswolds. They were cared for by local families, and they would take them in. Again, when I speak, I often feel the energy of what I'm speaking. He told me he was 9 years old, and he could remember when the air raid sirens went off. His mother would place him under a stairway and hold him till the all clear was sounded. They would then go outside to help each other's neighbors, as each day's bombing would bring massive destruction. He told his mother chose not to send him away, but they were fortunate and survived. He said that he went out one day and watched an air battle going on between two planes, and one of the planes went down in a local field. He said they rushed to the field and were able to rescue an English pilot from the wreckage and take him to safety. He went on to say he worries about our world as we watch history repeat itself in Ukraine. He says he stops by church every day and prays for them. We went back to our dinner, and I told him I can't imagine going through that as a child. He smiled. This is what he said. I am grateful for everything in my life. After the war, I moved here and found work. And now retired, I give back to my community and to my country by sharing my stories and my knowledge, hoping to leave this world a better place. Pretty amazing. I was struck by this man's story, and I thought to myself, I came here to walk through this beautiful countryside and experience the beauty of this place, but I was receiving so much more. That night, when I went to bed, I thought of the day's events and couldn't stop thinking of George and how his outlook on life was so positive and caring. I gave thanks for this man. I gave thanks for the kindness of everyone I met. I gave thanks to the beauty of this land, and in that moment, I went into fellowship mode. What is fellowship mode? It's turning a switch on inside, a switch that brought me back here to our circle and the oneness with the universe. A universe that had just expanded with an understanding that I was truly one with all our world, including the Cotswolds. There are no strangers. There's only our connection to a source that brings us full circle to the oneness of all life everywhere. The next morning, I woke up and had breakfast. Met our group as we began a 6-mile walk through the countryside. The day before, as I walked, I was in total awe of what I was seeing, but I was missing what was important. Today, the beautiful hills covered in yellow buttercups, blooming in the sunshine, took on new meaning and new life. And what was important revealed itself all around me as the flowers seemed to speak. My inner voice spoke and told me to remember that every flower, every blade of grass, every stone upon the ground has a life of its own. As I walked, suddenly one of the ladies in the group, Mary, came up to my side with a buttercup in hand and placed it next to my chin and said, "I see the reflection. You must love butter." This old childhood game that I had forgotten so long ago came back at the exact moment that I was listening to Source speak to me. God always finds a way to send you a message and to guide us. He uses each of us to awaken the understanding of the message he is trying to get you to receive. This beautiful soul, Mary, at this time, innocently brought me those flowers in the old wives' tale to awaken within me an awareness of Mother Nature and her love that embraces us all. As I continued to walk through the field began to reveal itself to me. It was as if I'd been in darkness and suddenly found myself in the light. I noticed first the ground I was walking upon. Each step I had taken had left footprints. I could see in the pathway the small hoof prints left by the sheep I was sharing that field with. These footprints together reminded me that I was not alone. It reminded me that as I crossed this field, I shared it with others, both seen and unseen. As I walked, I noticed the stones in the pathway, and then one stone appeared in front of me, all by itself, as if placed with a purpose for me to see. I stopped and looked at it, and within my heart, a voice spoke to me and said, "Pick it up and take this stone with you. This stone carries the spirit of the Cotswolds and is a gift." And so I did. I continued to walk that day now, not feeling like a tourist or a visitor, but rather as if I belonged there. Each of us, if we slow down, take the time to notice what is all around us and understand we are never alone. When you feel a breeze touch you, enjoy that moment and thank the nature spirits for the coolness of its presence. When you look upwards and see the beautiful clouds, look within them for a gift. Perhaps a shape will reveal itself and have special meaning just for you. Feel the warmth of the sun and thanks the fire spirits for being with you. With a little practice, you will see signs all around you. The world we live in is not as simple as we imagine. There is so much more if we attune ourselves to nature. I know many of you here today have had these experiences yourselves. Perhaps a cardinal suddenly appears, or a butterfly may flutter by. With focus and practice, you realize they often come with a message. By quieting yourself and in listening to your heart speak, you will receive the message that is meant for you. I can't talk about this holiday without talking about the sheep. And I love that word holiday. That's going to be my new word for vacation. The landscape is so peaceful with its rolling hills and pastures. But we shared our walks each day with the sheep of the Cotswolds. So picturesque as we walked in open gates and crossed fields full of sheep with their newborn lambs. The lambs would baa at us as we passed, and their mothers would quickly run away, leading them away from those people coming through here to safety. You couldn't feel being there without feeling the presence of something much greater, something so much larger than we. Being this close to those beautiful animals brought about a feeling of awe. It's as if time stopped and you felt the oneness with everything you were experiencing, and you felt the gratitude that you could be part of something so magnificent. Another aspect of the Cotswolds were the trees. Trees so large and beautiful as they reached for the sun. The oaks twisted and grew in all directions. Their bases so large and wide, they could easily provide a wonderful home for an unseen elf who lived there. As I passed them, I occasionally could feel the presence of them. Perhaps it was the elf who lived there, or perhaps it was the spirit of the tree itself. As their roots went into the ground, I could sense their wisdom, knowing some of them were hundreds of years old. Imagine the secrets they could tell. Imagine the wisdom that they could share. Whenever I had a chance, I would touch their bark and whisper thank you for allowing me to share this place with you. Sometimes I would just move on. Other times I would feel that familiar tickling on the back of my neck, or a bird would suddenly appear close by in those moments and make me pause. These were magical moments for me as I felt connected to the spirit of this place. Next to my bed at home, I keep the stone I found in the field that day today. I placed it on the altar this morning. This is the typical color of all the buildings there. If you've been there, you'll recognize it. But I put it on the altar today, not so we could absorb its energy, but rather I put it on the altar to allow its spirit to help energize this church. The spirit of this stone connects me to those nature spirits in England. I also discovered its spirit has found a way to the elementals who visit me each night before I go to sleep. A week ago, I was working on today's talk and was holding this stone, and I closed my eyes, and my thoughts went to what am I grateful for today? When I opened them, above me was a blanket of fog covering me up. And within this fog-like mist were literally thousands of fairies coming to say goodnight to me. I reached out with my hand holding the stone, and they surrounded my hand and went round and round. I could feel their energy, and I could feel the love as they flew around me. Never had I ever seen so many in one place. This relationship that we have is special to me. And I love it when I feel an elf walking on the bed at night before I go to sleep, bringing me back to my childhood when they first appeared. Occasionally I get fooled. It turns out to be their Starry or Minnie Mouse, my two pet cats. But if you've ever had the experience of a cat or a small pet walking up onto your bed at night while you're going to sleep, That's what it feels like when you get a visit from a dwarf or an elf or whatever you like to call them. It's exactly what they feel like when they visit you at night. I'll often open my eyes wondering what I'm going to see, and sometimes I see nothing, but I still feel them, and I'll see an indentation. Sometimes I'll just see in front of me this mist again, and you can see through it, and it shimmers and it shines. There's no what you'd look at as a dwarf or an elf, but their presence is there. Someday, perhaps, when I cross over, perhaps I'll receive a greater understanding of how I've come to grow together with these beings. From now, I'm just going to be thankful that I'm able to have these relationships with these nature spirits. And I'm grateful to be able to share these experiences with you. One day, we were driven to Highgrove Castle to experience its gardens. This is the residence of King Charles, soon to be turned over to his son, who was the new Prince of Wales. Although we were told by people there that the king will probably himself remain in residence there, as he has firmly established himself there and has a great love for the gardens he himself created. We were there that day to experience these gardens. He himself has a great, deep love for our ecology and loves to garden himself. He has turned this place into which began as a simple pasture into a showcase of natural beauty. Everything is natural. He takes great care in ensuring that the ecosystems of this place remain always as they have been, not to be disturbed by man. The gardens he created must be left to grow on their own, as nature dictates, with his loving hand assisting. We were shown a small wooden building no larger than our office space under a large tree. And in it was a simple wooden chair and a small desk. We were told that this simple furniture and the building was built from a tree that had to be removed from this place because of disease. And he directed that the wood from this tree should remain where nature intended it to be, just in another form. Our tour guide told us that this is the place he comes to write and practice his speeches, and the people who work there often find him practicing his next speech when he is in residence. One day when he was there, he found a small seedling growing in that space, and he asked his gardeners if they had seen it, and they hadn't. He ordered it not to be disturbed, as this was the tree's home and not ours. He asked for a hole to be cut in this building through the roof so it would receive sunshine. Now this tree is about 4 foot tall, and they share this space together. He also has another cabin he calls the Serenity House with 6 seats inside, set in a circle where he invites people to meditate with him. The newspapers report that King Charles is perhaps a little strange in some ways. Could probably say that about me. I believe that he is connected to nature spirits, and people just cannot understand him and what he sees and feels. I believe he'd make a great member of this church. I have a new respect for him after this holiday, knowing that he loves to get in the garden and get dirty working with his own hands, creating a space where nature rules the day. It was a year ago that my oldest brother, Walter, told me about visiting the Cotswolds, that he and my sister-in-law, Sue, had been to and just completed a bus tour through this region. He told me he was amazed when he found out that you could choose to see this place by walking tours. This struck a chord in me, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do. Looking back, I cannot imagine seeing this place from the window on a bus. On my last night sleeping there, I went to bed as always, and I allowed my thoughts to randomly go to whatever I was thankful for that day, as I do every night. At the end, I always invite the nature spirits who I see to join me in my dreams so we can speak to one another on a soul level. That night, I had a dream of walking through those pastures' rolling hills, and I could watch the sheep on the hillside, and it brought me to a place of peace. Then, as I watched in my dream, I saw a large figure of a man so big that when he outstretched his arms, he could cover one field. He floated above the ground, smiling at everything below him. He appeared older, with a white beard flowing in the breeze, and he was wearing a simple white gown. As he floated above the fields, I could see and sense that everything below him was alive. Every flower had its own fairy. The grass moved with him and shimmered in the moonlight. The trees reached towards him with their branches. I had read about the presence of the Lady of the Woods, and I believe this is what was being shown to me in this dream. I always, whenever I enter a wooded area, ask the Lady of the Woods for permission to be there, often leaving a gift, sometimes bird seed, sometimes just picking up trash as I'm walking. The Lady of the Woods and their spirit oversee all the elementals in their area of control. In return, they often send messengers as I walk. Perhaps a bird or a squirrel or a fragrance in the air. There is a knowing that occurs when these signs happen where it shouldn't. I now know to thank the gentleman and the lady as I begin my spirit walk in the woods with Mother Nature. I don't often have many dreams or remember them, but I've had a lot of them since that one. And they're all as vivid right now as when it happened. I feel very fortunate to have made this trip, and there is so much more I could share. I believe it was meant for me to return there, as I've had many lives in Great Britain that have been shown to me. Will I visit again? I would like to. But if I don't, I can simply hold this stone, close my eyes, and return there whenever I wish. I have gained so much more understanding of myself because of this trip. And this dream I described is my reality. And it has given me a new profound respect of Mother Nature and of our God who created all of this wonderful world for each of us to enjoy. So I say to you, open your hearts and create the world that you want to explore. And in our oneness, my experience is yours. So thank you for allowing me to share today. Okay.